I want to talk to you about what I think is the most important thing you should do if you are isolating or quarantining someone in a bedroom with COVID-19. And that is to tape off the supply air vents and the return air vents that are within the room. The reason for doing this is that the supply air vent is going to be blowing out air from the furnace or the heat pump. And in the case of this bedroom, there's no return, so it will be blowing the air out, mixing it with the air in the room and any contaminated air that we have in here, and then creating an air pathway that goes out through the door into the breathing space of the rest of the house and exposes the occupants to contaminated air. It will then travel down the hallway and back up into the return. So we really don't want to have this airflow pathway. So we tape off the supplies, and then if we have returns in the room, we also tape those off as well. And that way we can be sure that we're not transmitting any potentially contaminated air from the isolation room to the other people in the house. Let's go look at this on the computer.
Before I show you my schematic showing why we want to tape off supply and return air registers in an isolation COVID bedroom, I wanted to share this new study that I think really has some very important observations in it. And that is that if you're sharing a household with someone with COVID-19, within a week, you have a 53% chance of becoming infected. That's an important finding if it holds true. And my speculation is that fits what my thoughts were on this. The recommendations that come out of this study, they're not as refined as the observation. And so what we have here is self-isolated home. I assume this is the individual that is being isolated. Then it just says appropriate self-quarantine of household contacts. This to me would be the other people in the household, and appropriate to me would be a little light on the terms of this. I think it would be all other people in the household need to self-quarantine as well and not go out, because there's a good chance that they're going to spread it if they've got a 50-50 chance within a week of getting it. Number 3, everybody in the household wearing a mask in shared spaces. Well, that sounds, you would certainly want to wear your mask in the COVID isolation bedroom. And if this is all you're doing is isolation, you need to wear a mask all the time, wherever you are in the house, as far as I'm concerned. The study doesn't mention hand washing, but I assume that that's there. Now, I break down poor ventilation in buildings into 4 components and filtration. And those are listed at the bottom. So you'll look at my other videos and you'll see what those are all about. But just wanted to mention that as we go forward. So here's our review of 2 conditions. Looking first at a bedroom without return air register room. That means it just has a supply, 1 or more supply air vents. And when I showed you at the beginning, when I was up on the ladder, that's what I was doing. I was taping off that vent. So this is what we get in a house with central returns. That means only 1 or 2 returns, and we end up with a supply air register in the rooms, which are the red rectangles, and then the return is shown here with a red border on it. And this gives us an airflow pattern that looks like this. Air is coming out of the supplies and going to the returns. And this takes place every place from all supplies back to the central returns. Now, what this leads us up with is one of my concerns, which is directional airflow coming back down this hallway. It's a small space, it's a confining space, I find, and that if we had a sick person with COVID-19, then it becomes a problematic airflow, which I'll show you. I'll demonstrate that in a second here. So we're going to use bedroom number 3 as our isolation bedroom. We have our isolated person, and then we have the other household members represented by these 2 icons. So when we have an infected person, they are going to be exhaling droplets and aerosols. Super spreaders are going to do a lot more production than someone that's not a super spreader. But whatever it is, we're going to get some volume of contaminated air that's going to be focused in that isolation bedroom. When the untaped duct scenario is if the supply air register is untaped, this is what will happen. So that contaminated air is going to start moving along with this other supply air that comes out of this register back to that return. And we're going to end up with this situation, which I represent here. And we end up with contaminated air passing right by our person that's other family member in the household. So this is what I call my recipe for disaster. I have a problematic airflow in a confining space, this little tiny hallway or this doorway, and then we have people that are in that way. So their risk goes up. So on this, we have this scenario. I would, just going back to that study, I would say greater than 50% risk of getting infected. So our solution to here, which I brought up at the beginning, is quite straightforward. The immediate solution doesn't solve the big problem, but we tape off the supply air registers in all that, every supply air register in that room. So if we were in our master bedroom, that would mean this supply right here at there, one on the exterior wall near the window, and one in this walk-in closet. And what we end up with in that scenario is good. We've stopped distribution of COVID air out through the hallway. That's good, but we still have this COVID air in the bedroom, which we have to address in one way or another, and we'll come back to that at the end of the presentation. So let's go on to the other one. So the second condition is the isolation bedroom has supply and return in it. And so we have a different look here. Instead of having just the one central return located here, each room has got a return. And so the airflow pathway in our isolation bedroom looks like this, simplified airflow. Let's take this away. And then we get this airflow happening all throughout the house, just as we did in the other one. The good part about this one is we don't have this airflow pattern way, this directional airflow pattern way that is in the hallway. All right. So once again, bedroom number 3 is the isolation bedroom. We have a certain amount of contaminated air in that bedroom. The thermostat calls for heating, or it is set in the fan on position. And so we start airflow. We have airflow going from the supplies to the return. And so now our contaminated air from the bedroom is pulled into this bedroom return right away. So we're not exposing our person out here in the hallway on this one, but we're going to be doing this instead. So now the contaminated air goes into that bedroom return, goes back up through the ductwork to the central system, gets heated, cooled, filtered, dehumidified, air conditioned, so forth. And then it comes back out and it makes its way out to the supplies. And so we end up with all of these supplies now are going to be releasing some amount of much reduced amount, a much diluted amount of COVID-19 air to the rest of the space. Is that good? I say, yes, it's good. I want a diluted dose. Whenever I can dilute the strength of a dose, that's better. It's not the complete solution. The best solution is to remove the dose from the airstream, but this is what is certainly a better scenario than our hallway scenario with contaminated air in it. And it looks like, based on this brand new research study, is that the risk of infection by exposure to ventilation system air of COVID, these are aerosols particularly traveling through it, is presumably very low due to dilution, which we've just talked about, and drying. And what this means is when you read this study is that they tried to culture the aerosols that were on the supply air registers and on the filters, and they found them to be non-viable, which means that they're not infectious anymore, which would make this a perfect solution that says that it's perfectly okay to use our central air handling unit systems and our heating and cooling systems as a tool. And so running those systems continuously is the way to go. And that is really good news. All right. So whatever situation we have, and in this case here, where I got to wrap this one up, is that the solution to solve this problem, the immediate solution about the registers, is not only do we tape over the supply, but we also tape over the return. And we're still left with contaminated air in that bedroom, which is going to get to the rest of the house one way or another. And it's too much risk. And that's why 50% of people are getting sick within 7 days in that study. So to conclude on this one, the solution with just these ducts closed or without doing that, you got to wear your mask all the time. Everybody's got to wear the mask all the time, not just in the shared spaces. Like I said earlier, my recommendation is everybody wear mask wearing all the time. Then the most common thing that you could do there is get a HEPA room air cleaner, stick it in that bedroom to start removing some of these droplets and aerosols, catching them on the filter, making that air safer. But what I strongly recommend you do, and in my other videos, I go into this in great depth, is to then put in a direct window exhaust into the isolation bedroom so that we will exhaust this COVID contaminated air directly to the outside and get it out of our breathing space as fast as possible. So room air cleaner, HEPA room air cleaner, and direct window exhaust. That's my ticket. And if you take that pathway, your numbers in terms of risk potential will be significantly less than if you did not do that.
Okay, that's what I wanted to talk to you about with taping off supply and return air vents. Please check out the other videos that I'm putting up on how to do safe COVID ventilation in your home and then when you go out as well. If you like this, please share it with anybody that you think that might be benefit from that. And I guess you're supposed to say now, hit the like button.